Making a rock-solid synth bass sound can take your song to new heights in terms of groove and energy. In this movie, we'll carve out a nice synth bass sound with the vacuum synth instrument in Pro Tools. As always, we start out with the oscillators, abbreviated VTO here for vacuum tube oscillators. We have VTO1 and VTO2. Instead of an octave number, vacuum has an octave range setting on the oscillators, and since this is a bass sound, we want some of the lower ranges. We'll change it to 16 here for both VTO1 and 2. Bigger numbers will mean bassier sounds. For VTO1, for the shape of the waveform, let's change it to triangle or somewhere near triangle. The triangle will give a mellower, rounder tone, which is sometimes wanted with low-frequency bass sounds. But you have to be careful about being too mellow or not having enough upper harmonics with bass sounds. Otherwise, the bass can get lost in the mix. So for VTO2, we'll leave it as a sawtooth wave, and that'll give us the bite we need. Let's also detune the VTO2 slightly to fatten the tone a little bit. So there I'm going to go to the fine tuning range and just take it down very slightly. So let's hear what this sounds like so far. Pretty fat bass sound. Next, let's deal with the filters. Ideally, I like to set up a low-pass filter that opens up with some resonant bite as the note is struck, and then it returns to a bassy tone as the note rings out. So I use a combination of an envelope and the VT-LPF filter, the low-pass filter, to make this. I'm going to turn the cutoff pretty low. Right now it's wide open, so we're hearing all frequencies. And as I play a note, I'll turn it down. So we're going to cut out some of the high frequencies. Take it to about half. And then I'm going to give it a pretty healthy resonance, about 25%, so we get a little bit of that bite. And we'll really hear the resonance more once we introduce the envelope. Under the VT-LPass filter, I'm going to introduce the envelope all the way, so that envelope will be able to affect this filter. And I'll set up the envelope down here where it says envelope 1. Here I'm looking for the filter cutoff to open up slightly on the attack. So for each note, we want to hear the filter open up. So I'll rotate the attack knob a little bit to about 20 milliseconds. You can see down here an update of what our status is in terms of how many milliseconds the parameter's value is. Right there is about 20 milliseconds. I'll take the decay to about 320 milliseconds. And we'll keep the sustain pretty high, to about 95. We don't really want any release there. Let's hear how that opens up the filter. I actually want the attack to be even longer. So that's too long. It's taking a long time to open up, but somewhere in between, say around 300 should be good. Maybe a little less. Good. So there's an additional setting I want to check to really make the effect work. I want to activate glide. So I'm going to go down to the settings tool. This is not part of the regular user interface. You have to go into the settings to get this. And notice the glide is activated. And remember, that's nice, especially for bass sounds, or we used it in lead synth sounds to kind of move between the notes, which I like. The only thing I want to also check is the envelope retrigger. It's currently off. So as notes move from one to another, if the note doesn't end before the next note begins, the filter won't retrigger. And we did all this work to the filter, so let's actually turn this on, and then with each new note, the filter will retrigger. And turn that off, and now we can hear the filter with every note will retrigger and reopen. So that's kind of a secret part of getting your bass sound to have the bite throughout as you're moving from note to note. Okay, let's listen to how this works in our song. So I'm going to close the vacuum for a second. I'll solo the track, and we'll hear this MIDI region by itself. Okay, it's sounding nice, has some nice bite, but it also has some low resonance, and let's hear it in context with the song. I think it's great. The only thing I would dial back, just take the cutoff and the low pass filter down a little bit. Just cut out a little bit more of the high frequencies. And maybe the resonance down slightly. So that's one of many possible recipes for a synth bass. Definitely take the time to experiment with the filters, envelopes, and different waveforms on this synth for a bunch of cool other bass styles.